this anthem tracks. Boy, I ain't playing. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Grown Man Shit podcast. I have here a mystifier. I don't know what that is yet, but he is going to tell us everything about mystifying. Please introduce yourself, sir.
Yeah, my name's Taylor, The American Mystifier. I use magic, mentalism, and hypnosis to help inspire and entertain people. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Please tell us more about what that entails.
well, basically, I kind of use it as a way to share an experience. So usually I take people on a trip through the history of magic. Oh, shit. I better turn that off. I thought I had that off.
Oh, man, dude.
That's how you know it's real, man.
Very real. I had to make sure mine was off, too.
Yeah, there we go. See? Yeah, no, really. I usually take people on a trip through the history of magic. Thousands of years ago, the first stuff that was ever created, and then I show people how that changed over time. And for kids, I do programs for kids as well.
Okay.
For kids, I show them how that can relate to them. And the way that I do that is I usually share a message of inclusion. I talk about the history of magic and how people judge that. And then I also talk about how we as individuals see things through different lenses. And one of the most prominent things that you hear about when you hear about magic is the idea of misdirection.
Yes.
Right? How your attention can be directed. And so I teach kids about that, how their attention can be misdirected, and how their focus, where they put their focus, whether that's on the aspects of somebody they don't like, or whether that's on aspects of something they can find to like in that person, they can move past that, and find a connection with people.
Got you. So what got you into being this mystifier? How did this become your being in life?
So I think what happened was I realized that magic and mentalism, all these mystery arts, in essence, embodied a transformational process. Really, when you try to do the impossible, it's really the epic, right? You see it in any historical figure. It's this idea of transcending the human.
Yes.
And that is what magic is supposed to be about. It's the transcendent, to overcome. And so when I realized that, I realized my character, my archetype, was the mystical, the transcendent, the magic, right? And so that's what I try to live up to in the performances that I do and in the way that I teach. I try to have an air of mystery, but also how can we learn? How can we transcend our past self?
So, in the meaning of transcending, are you talking about transcending the person that you are internally to become what it is that you want to become, or what type of transcending are you meaning? Because if you talk about religion, you are transcending your formation, your physical formation into a spiritual realm.
Yeah, that could apply as well too. In essence, that's all magic, right? To me, it's all singular philosophy. It's all about the same thing. It's based in perception. And so my entire life, my persona, which is something that I do on one of my YouTube channels, I do have a YouTube channel dedicated to some of the stuff that I'm interested in. But what I do is I focus on the many different ways that archetype plays through history and people and me, right? And so to me, it's all of that is, no matter what it is, whether it's transcending yourself, whether it's a spiritual endeavor, that is the true nature of magic to me. And I try to live that way as if that's the point of life. Because sometimes people will live their lives as if they're running from something or if they're fighting against something. But those two things don't embody, I think, the ideal life, which in my mind is being able to be free. Right? To be transcending things. Because if you're always transcending something, you're always moving to the next thing. Nothing's going to hold you back. You're not going to be torn down, right? I don't
That's,
know. That's my perspective, I
I
guess.
mean, it's funny how you understand magic because most people see magic as a trick, as an illusion, but you're saying magic is actually freedom. Please elaborate more on that.
Yeah, it's a symbol. Yeah, it is a symbol, and I think that everybody subconsciously knows it.
Mm-hmm.
When they see the impossible and they'll have a kid-like reaction, right? We are feeling what it's like to see wonder, mystery. It is a sense of magic.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the belief as kids when we see that, oh, could I do that too? Could
Mm-hmm.
I transcend? And that is that's just the image that's there. And so to do magic without that element would be pointless,
Hmm.
in my opinion. And I see people who do it and it's just, it's just a joke or it's just a trick and that's it. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, well, that's sad to me because the real point is that it's playing on our true desire to be better, to evolve, to change.
How'd you come up with that concept? I love the concept. It's just when I think about magic and think about what others may possibly think about magic, it it doesn't correlate with what you're saying. So for me, I'm just trying to get the audience to broaden their horizon by you explaining how did you come to this understanding that the transcending and the magic and the all of one came together.
So to me, I think the reason why is because how should I put this? When you like, where's the disconnect for you specifically? So give me an example of something that is hard for you to understand how magic relates to the concept of transcending oneself.
Well, no, I get it, but I'm saying there's a multitude of people out there because I know older people that are like magic is bad because they believe it's a misdirection. It's not
Oh, it's a deception.
exactly.
It's a deception. Okay, I catch what you're saying. So yeah, the problem I think people have a hard time understanding is that when you look at the real world, everything to some degree is an illusion.
Mm-hmm.
We are all limited by our own perceptions and beliefs. And it was by exploring magic and being mystified that curiosity sprouted forward.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was this transformation from the being mystified to the curious, right? And then from curiosity comes the knowledge, the transformation, the learning. And so it actually transforms. And so I think when people are scared of the experience, because there are people who are, and I've met
Mm-hmm.
people like this, they don't like magic because it makes them feel, I guess, in a way, insecure
Mm-hmm.
about reality to some degree. And it's I think it's playing off that fact that they're scared to face it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the fact that we can see that something we didn't believe was possible suddenly appears to be possible, even if it's an illusion. You didn't know until that moment that it could look that real, right? You
Mm-hmm.
didn't know. And that means there's something there that is elusive, something that could be learned. And so I think that is what really brought me into that perspective, is just seeing that everything we look at, everything we see is in essence a semi-illusion. There's an illusion to it. And we can trick ourselves if we're not careful too. Anyway, like,
Most
you can
definitely.
have good intentions, you can have things you want to do for the right reasons. And if you're not careful and you aren't curious and you aren't growing, you might unintentionally do something you don't want to do. If
Okay.
that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. So when explaining your foresight that you have with magic to children, how do you go about doing that?
So the really cool thing that I do is I use magic tricks. Now, there's this one that I have that's called the linking rings. I won't do that one here. I'll do something smaller that's simpler with a ring that I brought.
Okay.
Just because, and they'll be able to see it. Don't worry, it's
Great,
pretty
great,
easy
great.
to see. Now, traditionally, there's two different things. I do one that I use ropes and they change lengths. And I think it's really nice because I can show kids that at one moment it's perceived as if they're all different, but the next moment they're all the same.
Hmm.
And this is much the same way we look at people.
Yes.
People are all different, but when you get to know them, you get to see them for who they are, we realize they're really human. They're all the same. We're all human deep down, and that's what really matters. Now, the other thing that's interesting is I usually use a set of rings, but I talk about connections between people. You know, sometimes it's easy for us to become disconnected, or it might be very difficult to reconnect with somebody, whatever the case might be. But I think the idea at large is important. You know, I'll just do this one more time so the camera can see. Now, to get to a new place, we oftentimes need other people, right? So sometimes you might find that it's really difficult to get through obstacles by yourself, but with a little help from someone else, you might travel and find yourself at your final goal, right? And so I use very simple visual imagery like that to help teach different ideas and concepts.
I love that because the magical object is actually you.
There you go. Clever. Now, you know, there's one that's interesting. You know, this is kind of interesting. This is a trick I made, by the way. I'm going to show you this next one. It's kind of fascinating. But basically, the problem with this trick is I was taking the ring off. People don't think about the fact that it's only really magic if you can put it back on. Right?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just an interesting idea.
No, but I love the idea of you teaching magic with the concepts of who you are as a person and what, you know, the outer structure of life brings to you, and how if you understand you being the core piece, how you can maneuver through it. That's pretty dope, man.
Yeah.
That is amazing. That is amazing. I mean, when you were doing your tricks, I was like, wow, that's actually him moving through the universe in whatever way, manipulating it to fit however he wants it to be. So that, man, that's crazy. That, thank you for showing me that, man. I mean, gives me a broader spectrum of the concept of you are your perception.
Yes, exactly. See, perception plays an astounding role in the reality that we create. And that's something else that I talk about on my channel. And, you know, I do believe in the concept of manifestation.
Yes.
And I'm a materialist, you know, in a way. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm perfectly materialist by materialist definition, but for like I believe that like things are causal. But what people often forget, like people try to frame matter or reality in this really like narrow vision that everything can be mathematically calculated from any point. You know, you can go back infinitely or whatever to whenever time and you can know exactly what's going to happen here and now. But let's just consider this. If the universe is truly infinite in all directions, then that means that even if time right now was finite, there's an infinite number of things interacting, which means there's no single point at which the math starts. In other words, there's no actual single point you could calculate from. So you can't calculate all variables ever, which means nothing is 100% predictable. So that's how you know true random exists, if you think about it. Because if there's an infinite amount, right, an infinite amount of space, then there's no way to actually define every single interaction that exists. So there's always going to be an element that's, you see what I'm saying? That's just not calculable. You can't calculate every single detail.
So if we're saying that the object is people, you're saying people are very delusional.
Well, I wouldn't say people are delusional. No, what I'm saying is I'm saying that the world is a mix of two different things, right? They are usually opposing to each other. And people will find this pretty often. So, like, you know, magic is like the opposite of normal sight. You normally look at something, it's just the way it is. But magic is the opposite of that. When you see it, it's elusive. Now, there is some truth to it. There is some truth to what you're seeing. It is real to some degree in the sense that something's going on that's not there normally. But then, again, even in that magical moment, there's a combination. There's some that's true and some that's not. And so the point that I was getting at is basically that there is this mix, you know. There's the finite and the infinite together at the same time. So I don't know. I mean, that some people find that kind of like a weird concept, you know.
No, I think it makes sense because everything correlates, everything is together. I believe we as people try to separate things in order to
Yeah.
get a better understanding from them. That that's what practice is. It's more of a separation so you can build a skill.
Exactly. Yeah.
But the problem is we don't put those pieces back together. We keep trying to have them separate.
Yes.
And when you were doing your trick, it's like, no, this I am the object, but you see me moving through all these other objects, but it's still me.
Yeah, it's my expression. It's coming from me. Yeah. And yeah, that's just something that I think everybody should embrace to some point. Like if you're doing an art, if you're out there and you're planning something and you're doing something, the most powerful thing you can do is be yourself. The more I've done that, the more real and the more of effect it seems to have. So I've tried to move that way over time. And sometimes you have to discover yourself. Yeah, you don't know exactly who you are yet, but we all have been there, for people out there who might be going through that.
I believe there's a lot of people out there. The understanding of self, now that's a totally different concept. That is magic within itself.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. Which, yeah, it's true.
And the possibilities of who you are, what you can do, and who you can impact, and everything else. That so, some people it drives them crazy. But I love how you are teaching the younger generation that through indirectly, but I believe they'll get it subconsciously because they have the imagination too. So they can be like, well, this can work for me too. It's just adults. For me, I think adults, when you come into adulthood, you become stuck.
Yeah. Well, and so I do hypnosis as well.
Okay.
And I think the fundamental thing, and you had a hypnotist on just the other day.
Yes, yes.
I was
yes.
watching that. It was really interesting. And to me, I think that fundamentally kind of shows why that happens to some degree. When people get older, there's studies that show that people are actually less hypnotizable.
Really?
Yes, and it's not every person, but when the younger they are, the more of the population is hypnotizable. And then as you get older, for some reason, certain people just kind of fall off a little bit to some degree, and still there's usually a good portion of the population that can be hypnotized, and then there's some people who are extremely hypnotizable. But the point being is, you find people that can be hypnotized, they have a very flexible mind. They're very good at visualization. And but there is something to be said that somehow older people, certainly, there's something there that changes their flexibility of mind. And I don't know what that is. I don't know anything about the studies there, but I'll be honest. But I do know that there is evidence for that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it has to do with the perception of their reality. As we've talked about with the ring, they're stuck. They were stuck in the band, and they couldn't get themselves free. So the only, the same thing with the elephant. When the elephant's a baby, you tie it to a rope.
Yeah.
You tie the that same elephant when it's adult to that rope, and it won't try to break loose. So I believe that's a form of hypnotism as well.
Yeah.
Training is actually a form of hypnotism.
Yeah.
It makes sure that certain parts of your body have a certain reaction toward certain things, which I believe is a form of hypnosis, whether it's good or whether it's bad. I'm in marketing, so I'm constantly trying to hypnotize people.
Yep. That's true.
Ads, the way the ads look, color coordination, even the target markets that we go after. So I get it. I mean, it seems like everything that we're doing has to do with some type of redirecting to make you think a certain way. So I believe we're all doing magic in some type of way or form.
Exactly. It's misdirection. It is. And, it's interesting to say that because that is something I have talked about before, something I do for like corporate events. If I do a corporate event, I'll do something like a team building or some type of workshop. And we'll talk about that because a huge portion of any activity, doesn't matter what you're doing, has to do purely with perception. And to me, the way I look at it is your awareness, even in your own mind, think about this, even in your own mind, is it's like a little vehicle that is existing in your mind. And so within your own thoughts, you're actually moving from place to place, right? Inside yourself. But when you watch things outside, it's what you focus on that creates the most growth. So an example is if you really want to learn something, it's all about how deeply you can bring yourself into that focus. The more you're brought into a state of focus on a single part, like you said, breaking something apart into pieces, separating things, that is the key. And then you can analyze each piece, but then you have to bring them back together again in a single line of focus. But it's just an interesting process by far.
So, what do you have more fun with? Your corporate events or teaching the children?
Yeah, I would have to say, kids are fun. It depends on the group of kids. It depends on the group of kids.
Okay.
I went to this. I went to a school all the way up in Chelan. They had me come out there for a school event, and they also had like some fundraiser for this school. And these kids, it was like an unconventional school that they had they really focused on the kids individually, and they had all these people who would help them. And they were some of the most wonderful people to perform for, or kids to perform for, because they're so well behaved, but they knew how to ask questions, and it was very interesting. Because I've gone to a lot of different places, and I've never had a group of kids that was that respectful and kind, which is really cool. But speaking of corporate events are a lot of fun because you get respect for what you do in a real way, because they can understand the real amount of skill that you use. And kids don't compute. It's just like, it's all magic. It's all amazing. But like they don't like, an adult is like, they're skeptical. It's challenging. When you show them something and they think about it in a different way, that you've really done something real. If that makes sense. Because they're harder to, they don't change as much. It's not easy for them to get that experience.
And that's just what I was going to say. I was going to be like, you know what? I think it has to do with, as a child, you have the infinite possibility of understanding because you just believe anything is endless. As an adult, you place so many blockers because so many things have happened in your life. And so you're like, okay, well, I don't want this to happen. I don't want that to happen. I don't want that to happen. So what we end up doing is placing negligence on the possibilities of things that can actually happen. And that's how we formulate our habits, is we just say, okay, this happened to me, so I know I'm not going to do that. This happened to me, so I'm not going to do that, or I am going to do that. Instead of just leaving everything open. As a child, everything is open. It's an open book. As we grow older, things don't become open books. I believe we get scarce. And what you can do with being an illusionist and a hypnotist is miraculous to them, because it's like, wow, there is something else that I can do, and it opens them up, which I believe they in turn give you gratification, as well as I believe some of them are some skeptics because they can't do it. But no, I think that's kind of one of the dopest things that you can do. For me, I'm just learning about all this stuff on a mental aspect, about what you can do and how you can do it and how you go about doing it. I'm learning that the plane really isn't the world, but the plane is you. You're the antenna. You control and manipulate through this world, just like you did with these objects.
Yeah.
That's why when you showed me the objects, I was like, wow, the object is you. I got it. I was like, okay. But it's still trying to maneuver and placate yourself and place yourself in those environments that you want to be. But you have to do that here first before you can do that in the real world. And so with children, they kind of understand that concept. As an adult, you don't get it. And so, I'm going back to understanding that because of the heartbreaks that I've had and certain things that I've gone through and other things that I've had with my family. And it's like, okay, what can make me more powerful? What can make me forgive? What can make me not forget, but be able to move on and heal others? And where does that start? And I thought it started outside of me. Well, I had talked to a whole bunch of people, family, friends, and everything else. And it seems like you just get that regurgitated message that is inside your head. So it's like, hold on. No, this is the same message that I'm getting. I need to do something different. And so I started thinking, I was like, well, what if it's me? What if the whole time this whole thing is me and I need to change me internally? I tried to change me externally. It didn't work for those people. So that can't be the case anymore. So what is it? It's an internal thing. And I'm learning that it's internal. The universe, even this universe that you've just manipulated, had to do with the way that you see it. It's an internal thing because any and everybody can do it, but they can't do it your way. And they can't do it the way it is that you've seen it. And you had to see this first before you could do it. I believe that's the way that magic works. You have to have the belief, the faith, before you can actually go into it.
Yes. Yes, that's exactly true. I think that's the fundamental thing. So one of the things that I've discovered that is the key, in a way, it's the energy of everything. It all begins with belief. And people are like, well, what do you mean belief? Do you just believe something? Well, no, it's not that. That isn't how it works. But rather, it's that belief it's like a bunch of switches in your head.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you change a belief, right, it changes a little bit about how you act,
Yes, it does.
right? And so what that is it's the relationship. Beliefs are the relationship between you and the world. And so it's like imagine a wire, right, going out to the world and then it comes back. You see things. When you see something, there is a physical connection. There, some light has come from that thing to your eye. There's a connection of energy that's run from you to that thing. Mm-hmm. And when that happens, your beliefs channel how that goes back out to the universe.
Yes.
So the belief itself is what's actually creating the reaction. And belief is fundamentally the core of identity. Is why identity of yourself is so important. You need to know who you are, why you do what you do, because the more you know, the less uncertainty there is, and the more effect it has on the real world. One thing that just blows my mind is that idea of faith, belief, because you have to learn how to change belief. Like, how do you do that, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, have you had an experience where you had to change a belief and it was like something that you felt, but somehow you had to shift the way you felt about that thing?
I'm that incubation right now.
Yeah. I know I have. I just figured I'd ask you because you were just talking about that, and that's wild because for me that has been the biggest change for me in what has created success for me. You know, I remember a time when I didn't think I could do this full time. You know, I didn't think I could do magic. I didn't think I could become a mystifier. I didn't have this vision of who I was. And it was like I just began to see it. You begin to see it first, and you don't believe it yet. But you know that you can believe it. Mm-hmm. That's what you have to start with. The belief that you could possibly believe it in the future.
Yeah.
I believe I'm worthy of this. I believe I can go do this thing. I believe that I have the capability of being able to do it, you know? And then it will come to me. That's the other thing. You have to believe that you'll be able to see the answer. Because it never comes to you just as magic. Mm-hmm. There's always a solution. Like you are presented with an opportunity or a thing, and it's how you respond to that new thing. And if you're looking for it, then it's there. You know, it will present itself. And people will say, oh, it's just statistics. And it doesn't matter if it's just, it doesn't matter if it is.
Right.
Because the fact is it's your belief that's allowing that probability to then become the reality, right? If you hadn't put faith in that new thing, if you hadn't changed your perspective, it never would have happened.
So manifestation is real. It's the form of personal magic which is placing your belief in yourself before it actually happens.
Yes, it is. It's the focus. You are allowing your perception because perception is the key. Where your intention is, where your desire is. Desire informs belief. So you have to understand what you believe and how it's different, and you have to build a desire for that to change. And you have to believe that that can change. And once those things happen, then a new belief will form in its place, and that will fundamentally alter the course of your potential future, whatever your potential future was before. And of course, you have to be able to see your futures to some degree, be willing to look there. But again, that comes down to your focus. Are you focusing on your future? Are you focusing on what you want? The less you focus on, the more powerful your focus.
Are these some of the things that you teach when you're doing corporate events?
Yeah, this is something that I would teach during a corporate event. And usually what I would do is I would do a demonstration. I would show somebody, somebody being hypnotized, and I would take the person and I would demonstrate using their arm, like here's the concept of how relaxed you can become. You can just become so relaxed. And that's a really nice thing to do. But the other cool thing is, I do some stuff with problem solving for some corporate events where we have a magic trick. I show them a magic trick. I have them try to figure it out, and then I demonstrate how it actually works at the end. And we'll see the different ideas that people come up with. All of it, though, has to do with the idea of first being able to accept that it can happen. Because even the person who gets hypnotized, they have to believe that they can be hypnotized before, I hypnotize them. Not necessarily believe it, but they have to be willing. There has to be some part of them that's open to the concept on some level.
Yeah. I mean, every concept, it has to be conceptual, and it has to be belief driven. I was reading. Well, no, I think somebody told me there was these monks. And like I said, somebody told me this, so I don't know how true it is. There are these monks, and so they wanted to see if they could create something just through their imagination by coming together. And I guess they created this monkey, and it was their pet monkey. They could actually all see it, and they actually existed. But the monkey kept causing havoc, so they had to get rid of it. But the funny part is that if you believe, goes to show how powerful, if you come together as a group to believe in one specific thing, how it can actually be manifested.
Yeah, no, it's true. No, that's completely valid. Yeah. Well, and that's kind of interesting thing. So I think money is like the most. I mean, it is a really good example of unified belief and its ability to affect the world. And really, what money was a creation. And I mean, no one intentionally did it, but it's quite wild if you think about it, because this, to me, like when we're talking about, this is like semi-metaphysics in a way, is the idea of creating systems that channel energy. And an example would be money. It's like represents something.
Yes.
Right? And so a great example of this is something that I thought of. This is going to be wild. People probably never heard of this idea. This is a wild idea that I came up with. But a great example of this would be, we have seen how energy is moved in social media, right? Social media, it's channeled through likes.
Yes.
It's channeled through views. It's a abstract thing, but until you had the concept of a like or a share or a view, there was no way to relate the value of something, right?
Right.
But as soon as a value becomes numerical, it becomes measurable, the mind is able to have control over it. And so if you want to have control over new things you've never had control over, right, you need to figure out a way to make it numerical, because that is, excuse me, that is what is turning it into material. See, when the mind forms something into a solid concept, and that concept then relates to material reality in some way, it becomes material. So I'll give you an example. So one problem that we've run into today is our politics. Everybody's familiar with it. We all have this huge problem where there's such division in politics.
Yes.
People wonder, oh man, well, what's with these? How could this be fixed? And we vote, and voting in its own way is a form of energy. It's moving, right?
Yes.
So here's an interesting thought. maybe the problem is that it's not numerical enough. Because if you think about the fact that politicians do not get rewarded for the well-being of the people they rule over, then you realize there's no connection, there's no shared energy, there's no exchange, there's no measurement, right? And so I had this wild idea, and I'm not saying anybody should do this, but it's just a wild idea that I haven't ever heard anybody think of, which is, what if we took something like a government, let's say, and rather the politicians were paid by the people, but with a specific currency that was only allotted to politicians. In other words, politicians couldn't own any currency beyond social currency of their people. And that currency was based off of how good the people's condition was.
Wow.
You see what I'm saying?
That would change. That would change the world.
Yeah, and if you think about it, because what this would do is it would align the benefit to the politician, obviously, with the benefit of the people. And the interesting thing about this is that you could have it so that every person would have an equal amount every year, it would be whatever cycle it would be, that they could pay the politician, right? And so nobody would have an unequal vote, but they would just vote on the different things, like things that they like. So you'd have different categories: health, wealth, happiness, whatever you want, different categories, something along that lines. And the more well-off people were, the better off the politician would be. Now, I don't know how you would completely implement that. There's like a million things there that, and I'm not saying that's like I'm an authority on the idea, but it is an interesting concept. And that's it's a simple example of how you can take and numerically sculpt a presence of something that hasn't had that done yet. People don't really measure social value of at least politicians in that way. And it would allow you to have more control over it in a way that you desire, if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. I always take idioms that people give me, and it's just like, okay, how can I make that work for me? It's just, okay, what is it that you want to come to fruition? Speaking for myself, how do I turn that into something tangible, something real, something that I can show people and give to people by helping them to understand whatever it is that they don't understand, but it is really helping them. It's giving back to them. I believe that the biggest contribution that you can do for anybody is always give back. Give them an understanding and help them to better themselves and then move on and go wherever it is that they need to go. I believe that is the best gift ever. That's what I love about magic. It's that little trick that if you pay attention to it, you still may not understand, but it will do something for you. It will always transcend you. Because if you can look beyond the trick and focus on something that is more solid, such as yourself or maybe a problem or something else like that, it actually shows you how to get through it, or gives you an idea about how to get through it. Most of us are sitting here looking for just the answer. And I don't think, just like with magic doesn't give you the answer straight up. It gives you pieces of it. It gives you an idea of it before you can understand it fully. Then once you understand it fully, you're like, man, that was simple. How did I not get that? Right. And we as people just make things more complicated than what they are. And I believe when you hypnotize, do you just hypnotize people as far as just for corporate events, or do you do it as far as helping themselves and improving themselves as well? Is that one of your services?
So one of the things I have I've helped people personally myself, and I have thought about doing it. I've helped people personally that were friends of mine better understand the process of self-hypnosis. I've taught it on the stage, right, to people and demonstrate how that works. But currently it's not something that I have offered people directly.
Okay.
The only reason I've thought about it is because I know how I could do it. It's, like I said, I've done it for some people that I know personally, but I never offered it as a service. But yeah, I don't know. To me, it's like, if you're going to offer somebody something like that, it needs to be specific. I would probably have to pick and choose the person and see somebody who went through similar things that I've gone through because I don't feel like I can say anything that I'm not qualified to. You know, if I haven't
Understandable.
experienced it,
Yeah.
I haven't solved the problem for myself. I can't share it with somebody else, you know.
Understandable.
Which I guess the things that I can share is habits. I've changed my habits. You know, I used to be incapable of really I couldn't work and produce the stuff that I do now. I couldn't bring myself to focus. I had major ADHD. It was a major problem for me, and nowadays it's like I almost never have problems with it. It's ridiculous.
Wow. I mean, the world has ADHD. I mean, you could help a lot of people.
Yeah, that is something I understand. Focus. I can teach you how to garner focus over time. Like it is a process. It doesn't happen instantly. You know, unless you are hypnotizable, then you can actually access it instantly. And if you're somebody who is less hypnotizable for some reason, you can train yourself. It's not like you can. It's not like it's something that you can't have access to. At least from my experience, that's what I believe. There might be a few people out there that can't be for some reason, but you know, I don't know.
I got you. So, what would be some of the craziest things that you've when you've had people under hypnotism that they've done?
Ooh, man, there's some wild stuff. You know, and one thing I do is I don't embarrass people.
No,
Or
you don't have to, yeah.
I try not to. Okay,
Gotcha.
I'm very careful about that. But you know, one that always comes to mind is I was at a camp. I was around a campfire. We were doing this. It was for like a high school. I think it was it was like some type of high school graduation party, right? And so I'd been doing some hypnosis throughout that night, and you know, once you get people in, man, they go out like that. They're out, you know. And if you guys ever want to see, you can check out some of the stuff on my YouTube channel. But
Yes.
yeah, it's cool. So the YouTube channel, I should say this really quick. YouTube channel is the American Mystifier. Okay, it does have Taylor Kyle in front of it. So Taylor Kyle, the American Mystifier, is one of my YouTube channels. I also have another channel that teaches magic. It's called the Elite Magic Academy for anybody who's interested. There's cool stuff there too. But as I was saying, back to the story. Now, so we're around this campfire. This girl is extremely hypnotizable. Man, it's crazy. And you know, I didn't realize how deep she had been in, or what access she had to trance, because we were having a conversation and somebody else had asked me to hypnotize her, and she's like, I don't know, you know, I don't know if I'm a little close to the fire, I'm scared I'm gonna fall in. And I'm like, don't worry, because if you hypnotize somebody and you know how they respond, and I knew how she responded, we were away from the fire anyway, but I knew that she wouldn't fall over.
Yeah.
And so she's like mid-sentence, you know, like, I don't want to fall in on, you know, I'm just a little unsure about that. And I'm like, sleep. And she's just like, pull on out, you know, just right there, drooped over. And so, you know, I have her give me her wallet, because you can tell them to do this. You can say, hey, give me your wallet. And so she gives me her wallet, and I erase her memory. She will not remember that I took her wallet at all. It's just not going to happen. All right. And then she's going to come out of it, and she won't even remember anything that has happened at all, as if no time has passed, is what I tell her, which is a common thing I do, and it works, but I've never had somebody stop halfway in a sentence before. So, you know, I pull her out of it. She comes up, and she just picks back up, like right where she was in the sentence, dude.
Wow.
Like right in the middle of the sentence, finishes the sentence, and I'm like, no worries, I already hypnotized you. And she's like, what? No way. And I'm like, yeah, I already hypnotized you. And she's like, you're joking. She like literally thought I was joking, like so serious, like, nah, there's no way. And she's like, starts to walk off. And I'm like, well, do you have your phone? And she's like, yeah, I do. She reaches in her pocket, and she's like, oh man, did I leave it? Did I leave it in the other room? Like, she's like, I left it. She like goes running off to the room. I'm like, hey, come back here. I have your phone. She's like, no way. And I'm like, I show it to her. She's like, oh yeah, that's my phone. It's like, what did I do? You pick it up for me? And she's like, literally no clue. And I'm like, and I'm just sitting here like, really? Like, I know that it works, but for having such a clean entrance into trance and then exit out of trance is just a bizarre thing, because you do see stuff like that are close to that, but it was so perfect. You know what I mean? It's just like, wow, that she was able to enter that state of trance. So I told her after that, you know, I gave her back her phone. I said, look, this is something you should probably look into. You know, if you have this ability to go into trance, maybe you should learn about it yourself, you know, and learn how to harness it for yourself, because it's a powerful thing.
Most is it easier to hypnotize men or women?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. It's a loaded question. I mean, it really depends. From my personal experience, it is a little bit easier to hypnotize women. I don't know if that's because there's an attraction factor. I think that some of it could be that if somebody likes you, it becomes easier to hypnotize them.
I believe that.
And so when you're performing and you do something unbelievable, it's inevitable that women are going to be attracted to you. It is because a lot of how a man's value comes about in a woman's eyes, it isn't just looks.
Yes.
Like there's a huge part of it that has to do with how somebody portrays themselves.
Most definitely.
And so if you can show that you're a reasonable person in an act and you do something crazy, a woman's going to go, wow, that's cool. And so I think that might be some of the reason, because now that they're already attracted to you, they're much more likely to want to play the part. They think there's something attractive about being hypnotized on stage. If you think about it, it would make sense.
Yeah, it would. I thought that was it because I was like, yeah.
It has to be what it is. That's the only thing I can think of. And, and also women do tend to be more intuitive too. They like the intuitive side of things. For some reason, I don't know if that's a cultural thing or what it is, but men in general, you meet men and they like to be a little more analytical in general.
Yeah.
And it could be cultural, whatever the reason, but that is how people tend to behave. So, yeah, that's all I really have to say on that.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I don't know if it's hypnotism, but I remember one time I was tired. I don't. So when I'm tired, I have this. My voice gets a lot deeper.
Yeah.
And so I was at school, and I was just like, I need to get out this class and go use the bathroom. So there was this girl that I actually liked, and she was like, all right, what's going on? And so I started talking to her. She was like, you cannot talk to me like that. I'm like, what are you talking about? She said, stop it. And I was like, what do you do? She said, your voice is, I was like, okay. And so ever since then, I was like, wow, there's a tone in your voice that makes certain women feel a certain way. And so I get it sometimes when I'm around, just my homegirls. They be like, listen, man, you can't talk to me like that. What do you mean? Yeah. Like, no, you got to go back to talking with that high pitch. I can do that.
Yeah.
It's just like, so it's crazy. It really is nuts that, the tonality in your voice, what it does, how it soothes certain people. Because even in situations of conflict, I have friends come to me and they were like, I like talking to you really because your voice, it soothes me, and what you're saying on top of that, I can understand. I'm like, wow. So that got me into, the idea of wanting to learn more about hypnotism, because there are some people that can hypnotize you and they don't even know it. Just by conversation. And I believe conversation is very hypnotizing. It's very mesmerizing. I remember when I was in college, and I took this attractive woman out on a date, and she was talking to me. And I loved the way that she talked, but I was also engulfed by the way that she looked. There was another time where I took another woman out. I loved the way that she looked, but I couldn't stand the way that she talked. And I was waiting for the date to end. It's like, yeah, but I can't wait for this to end.
Yeah.
So it's funny.
There's truth to that, that's for sure. It's interesting. Did you know that people find the British accent to be one of the most appealing accents?
I've heard women say that a lot. British and French.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's the studies show that if you're gonna do an ad, video ad, get a deep male British accented voice.
Okay.
Easy on the ears. You don't want it being too gravelly. My voice is probably a little too gravelly right now. But something like that. And, and people will respond better to that. Will watch more of the video for some reason. It's just an interesting thing. And
wow.
Yeah, and that's one thing. Because I'm interested in hypnosis, I look at stuff like that all the time. Like things that aren't even necessarily hypnosis, but they have to do with our perception. Why do we listen to things? Why do we focus on them? It's really interesting. Just really interesting stuff.
Humans are very interesting people.
Yeah, by far.
Yeah, we just yeah. Man. So, if there is there anything else you would like to add? Is there are you have a Twitter, an Instagram, or are you just on YouTube?
Oh no, I'm on. So I basically am on Instagram, Facebook. I don't really use Instagram and Facebook as much. I have a TikTok as well. That might be banned though soon. Right? Magic. Poof. Where to
So,
go?
and how can they get in touch with you personally?
So very simple. You can go to my company, Full Scale Entertainment. It's on my hat. That's Full Scale, or I should say fsentertainment.com. I'm sure you'll probably put a link
Oh
down
yes,
below the video.
most definitely.
Just because it's weird, it's spelled weirdly. You can also find me at booktaylornow.com as well. And yeah, so if you want to find me, you can find me on social medias. Google will probably have you find me too. If you just look up The American Mystifier or Taylor Kyle The American Mystifier, I'm going to pop up. I have 40 reviews on Google. Actually, there's more out there, but that's just the first that pop up. So,
Well, thank you, brother. I appreciate you on.
yeah, for sure.
Everybody, go check this guy out. Check my guy Taylor out. We appreciate you. We love you, and stay safe out there.